Hi, my name is Alisa Daubenspeck, and I'm an immigration attorney at Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles County, and today I'm going to be doing an Immigration Know Your Rights training. The outline of the training is that we are going to review some basic constitutional rights that everybody living in the United States holds. We're going to discuss how those rights apply in the immigration context. We're going to talk a little bit about family preparedness in the case that someone who is a caregiver in the family might be detained or deported. And we're going to share resources. And it's important to note that the material provided in the training today is legal information. It is not legal advice. So in terms of rights, everybody living in the United States is protected by certain provisions of the Constitution, and that includes the Fourth Amendment to the Bill of Rights, which is guaranteeing the freedom from unreasonable search and seizure, and the Fifth Amendment, which guarantees the freedom from self-incrimination, and this is where we find the right to silence. So what these rights mean is that we should have the ability to walk around and enjoy our lives and not be subject to unreasonable interference by government officials. And the burden that that places on government officials is that they cannot arrest us just because they want to. They need to have probable cause that we have broken a law. And in the immigration context, probable cause that we have broken an immigration law. But that probable cause cannot be based on a person's physical appearance. It can't be based on the language that they're speaking, and it cannot be based on their race. So how do agents determine probable cause if they can't racially profile? Well, they might use racial profiling in order to start talking to somebody, but then they're going to ask, when did you come to the United States? Where were you born? What was your legal status? And if you answer those questions, you are thereby giving them the probable cause that they need in order to arrest. So probable cause can also be obtained through a search, and it's important to know that if you consent to a search, documents that are found on your person can be used to make a determination that there is probable cause you have violated immigration laws. So that could include any kind of foreign ID, passport, birth certificate, consular ID, etc., combined with a lack of documents showing your legal status, like a lack of green card or work permit. Or also false documents that are found on your person, like a false social security number or green card, etc., could be used to determine that you violated immigration laws. Documents that you can carry without worrying about a finding of probable cause include a valid state ID or driver's license, as well as a copy of your valid work permit or green card. And we say a copy rather than the original because the originals are very expensive and time consuming to replace. You might want to keep those somewhere safe and travel with a copy. Another thing that you can do without showing probable cause of violating immigration law is to carry evidence of 2 years physical presence in the United States. And the reason that people are doing this is because the present administration has expanded the definition of expedited removal, which is a quick deportation that can happen without legal proceedings. And it used to just be used at the border. So when immigration officials detained someone entering at the border, they would issue an expedited removal and return that person quickly to their country without seeing an immigration judge. But now they are expanding the definition of expedited removal to apply to people who have entered without legal status and have less than 2 years presence in the United States. So some people are carrying evidence with them of more than 2 years presence in case they are detained, in order to be able to show that they are entitled to removal proceedings and to present their defense. And if you do decide to carry this, that should not give rise to a finding of probable cause because it's just evidence that shows that you're here in the United States, and it doesn't show whether your status is legal or without status. So you could bring copies of paychecks or bills or something that shows presence for 2 years. So what does it look like when someone protects their rights? It looks like not giving immigration officials the information that is needed to effect their arrest. So it is not providing the information about entries, exits, countries of birth. It's not consenting to a search, and it is not signing anything. And it is knowing that you have the right to speak with an attorney before you have a conversation with immigration officials. And in your house, you have even more strongly protected rights than you do on the street. So in the street, you have the right to silence. And in your house, you have the right to refuse entry by immigration officials. So immigration officials need either a valid arrest warrant or your consent to be able to enter into your house. They almost never have a valid search warrant, so they are almost always requesting your consent to enter. If they tell you that they have a search warrant, you should ask to see it to review whether it is a valid search warrant that requires their entry, or if what they're showing you is actually a document that still requires that you give them consent. And in order to not give them consent as you are reviewing the search warrant, it's best to ask them to pass it under the door or show it to you through the window and thoroughly review it to see whether or not this is a document that requires you to let them in. If you do let them in, they will most likely talk to everyone they find in your house and interview them and arrest people who they find probable cause for having violated immigration laws. So how do you know if a search warrant is valid? A valid search warrant will have the following 4 characteristics. It will be issued by a court. It will contain your correct name and address, and it will have an expiration date that is in the future. And if the search warrant is not valid, you are not required to allow immigration officials to enter your house. So this is a example of what could be a valid search warrant. And you can see it's issued by a court. It has an address on it. It has an expiration date. Obviously, this one is in the past, but if it's in the future, it could be valid. And you can see at the bottom that the title of the person who signed it is judge. The only thing this warrant doesn't have is the name of the person sought, but it does say see attachment A. So there's probably other pages that come behind this one, and you will want to review all of the pages to make sure that the name of the person sought is correct. This document is the one that 90% of the time immigration officials will use to try to enter your house, and it is not a valid search warrant. So you can see it's not issued by a court. It's issued by the Department of Homeland Security. There's no address to be searched. There's no expiration date. And the title of the person who signed it, you can see, is an immigration official. It is not a judge. So this is not a valid search warrant. And if this is what officials show you to try to enter your house, they also need your consent. So you are within your rights to deny entry if this is the document that is being presented to you as a search warrant. Something of note is that immigration officials need your consent, but not your informed consent in order to be able to enter your house. That means that they don't need for you to know who they are and why they're there. You just need to consent to their entry however they obtain it. So they will maybe tell you that they're the police or that they're investigating identity theft or they found your identification. They might tell you that they're actually just looking for someone else and trying to make sure that that person isn't there to get into your house. They might try to convince someone else in the house to let them in. Or they might even dress up and pretend that they're working on your house in order to obtain your consent to their entry. So it's important to know who you are consenting to enter yours. An important note is to not run from immigration agents. If you're stopped, a better way to end the interaction is to, if you're going to maintain your rights, tell them that you are maintaining your right to remain silent and ask if you're free to leave. And if they say yes, you can walk away. And remember that if you run from immigration agents, that gives them the probable cause that they need to arrest you. It is really hard to remember your rights in situations of stress when immigration agents are questioning you, or maybe they're yelling, or maybe they're pounding at the door. And the red card that is produced by the Immigrant Legal Resource Center can be helpful in those situations, just to remind you what your rights are and how to invoke them. So they're available in many languages. And on one side, they remind you of your rights. And on the other side, you can pass them to an immigration officer and let them know in writing that you are invoking your rights. And there's a QR code here that you can use to print out cards if you want to keep them on your person at all times. Also, NLS and lots of other nonprofits are distributing these, so you should be able to get a hold of one if you think that would be helpful for you. One of the things to note is that immigration officials have very large arrest quotas at this point. So you may be arrested even if you preserve your rights perfectly. But if that happens, it's possible that you could get the charges against you dismissed if you can show that the information against you was obtained in violation of your rights. If there is documentation of the encounter that you had with officials, that will strengthen your argument that your rights were violated. And it's important to note that it is legal to video and audio tape federal agents as they do their work, as long as you do not interfere with what they're doing. So what happens if you are arrested by immigration? Well, most people will be able to defend themselves in immigration court and request bond and go back to their families and live their lives pretty much as they did pre-arrest, while the case works its way through the courts, and the courts are very backlogged. But there are certain people who can be deported very quickly from the US. And so it's important to note these categories because it changes the way that the legal defense can happen. So if you already have a removal order or a deportation order, and that could be issued when you were detained entering without legal status at the border, or it could have been issued after you lost your case in immigration court, or if you did not appear at your hearing in immigration court. And also, we talked about the expanded expedited removal. So if you entered the country without legal status and have been present less than 2 years, or can show that you've been present less than 2 years, then you could also be subject to this expedited removal process. And then additionally, if you sign your own deportation, you can be removed very quickly. So those are the three categories of people that do not have a lot of time to plan a legal defense. It's important to note that if you fear being returned to your country, it is very necessary for you to tell that to immigration officials and say clearly that you want to apply for asylum, because they are now no longer required to ask you when they deport you if you have a fear of harm if you return to your country. So that's something that you have to communicate on your own very clearly. And it's always a good idea to consult with an attorney about whether you might have a removal order and whether you might qualify for any kind of immigration relief. And the next section is about family preparedness. We will be releasing more information and a guide to help with family preparedness planning. But right now, we're just going to briefly cover it. The basic idea is that you want to make a plan for how your family is going to react if a person who is a caregiver is detained and possibly deported, and plan for all of the possible contingencies. The first step in this is choosing somebody who is going to enact the plan, and talking with that person and making sure that they're on board. And then you want to memorize that person's phone number, because you won't have your cell phone available to you when you are given the opportunity to make a phone call from immigration detention. And then you're going to want to talk with your family and plan who would care for your dependents, both in the short term and in the long term, if you are detained and unavailable. And you also need to make sure that these people who are going to take care of your children are authorized, that you give authorization in their school or in their daycare, so that these people can pick them up in case of emergency, because otherwise you might have a situation where the school won't release your children to your caregivers. You also want to plan your legal defense, and have either a phone number of an attorney that your authorized trusted person will call, or if you don't have an attorney, I have provided here the IMDEF Rapid Response Hotline. And the number here is 213-833-8283. And this is it's not a 24-hour hotline. They're open from 9 to 4, but they can help your trusted person find you, and also help them obtain resources, legal defense resources for you. The other thing you want to do is make sure that you have all of the necessary documents together. And these are documents that will be helpful in the care of your children and also in preparing your legal defense, because you can't go around getting these documents after you're detained. So you want birth certificates for you and everyone in your family. You want passports. And especially if your long-term plan is to have your kids sent to you, they're going to need passports to leave the country. You're going to want vaccination records for everybody, legal documents, immigration documents, and you want to make sure that your trusted person has access to all of these documents, that they know exactly where to find them so that they can help you. It is incredibly important to obtain a consultation with an attorney if you have questions about your immigration case or any possible immigration defenses. But it is also incredibly important not to work with a notario or a document preparer. The unlicensed provision of legal services is both unlawful and dangerous. Now, immigration has said that they're going to be putting people in removal proceedings if their cases are denied. So you want to file your case with someone who understands immigration law and does a good job. And so if you have been a victim of notario fraud, I have a QR code here on the left where you can report it to the county. And on the right is a QR code with a link to the New Americans program at the Los Angeles Public Library. And this program offers consultations provided by attorneys or accredited representatives from nonprofit organizations. They do telephonic consultations, and you can book them online. So it's a wonderful resource. And I have some more links to more information. On the left, there's a link to more videos about protecting your rights and what it looks like when you do that. And on the right, there's a link to more information on family preparedness planning. So that is the presentation. I hope this has been helpful, and I hope that you stay strong and we will get through this together.